to admit that I'm somewhat of a dumpster diver. I often will drive down the alley on our block here, and I'm sometimes surprised by what I see that's been put by the garbage cans. And I often think to myself, wow, that's still a really good table, or that's really a good desk. And my mind, of course, races in terms of like, I wonder if I can use that. One time, I actually found a rather large mirror, which now hangs in our bridal room, in our bride's room. And I've also have put out the call to parishioners to let us know whenever they buy new furniture, and if their old furniture is still in good condition, to let us know. And we've actually furnished some of the rooms in the rectory. Now, no judgment on people who put furniture out in the alleyway. And actually, we're good now with furniture, so I don't need any more donations. But you know, there's that saying that one man's garbage is another person's treasure. Meaning that we sometimes overlook the value of things. And sometimes we really need to look at things in a different light in order to appreciate those things or even people. That theme is really kind of at the heart of today's readings. Beginning with the first reading from Wisdom, we hear the truth being spoken about how God has created all reality, and nothing that God has created does God loathe. Because God creates only those things that are pleasing and valuable to God. And so all creation as we know it, all of humanity as we have it, were created by God as something good. And we hear in Wisdom that God continues to sustain that goodness, that creation and all of humanity with his love. And the challenge, of course, is for us to kind of have the same mind of God, to be able to appreciate the value and goodness of creation and of all humanity. The gospel story today is a story of Zacchaeus, who knows that Jesus is coming into town and he can't see him because he's short in stature, and he climbs a sycamore tree to get a better look at Jesus. And we often focus on the activity of Zacchaeus, but I really want to kind of focus our attention today on really what Jesus does, or what he did, because really what he did was really countercultural. In Jesus' time, of course, tax collectors were not appreciated. Now, tax collectors would have been fellow Jewish people who corroborated with the occupying Romans. So people, of course, did not hold tax collectors in high regard because they were collaborating with the Romans. And so people did not want to have anything to do with them. They were ostracized in the community. They were seen as less than. And what does Jesus do? Jesus sees Zacchaeus not as a tax collector, but as a child of God in need of God's mercy, and calls out Zacchaeus by name. Again, signifying his inherent dignity. It's good for us, my friends, to hear the word of God today, because it has become all too common in today's world to vilify people, to see them as less than, to see them as unworthy of our respect or even our love. And you see this played out in many ways. And there is a lot of human suffering that happens because of that. I'm sure all of you have heard of what happened just a few days ago to Paul Pelosi the husband of the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. And I don't care where you stand politically, all of us should be disgusted by what has taken place. And to recognize that where did that come from? And I'm sure there are all kinds of reasons, but I believe that partially it comes from the culture of today, of our political discourse, where we tear people down, where we vilify them and make them seem less than human, which means then they do not deserve the respect due to them, and that their lives are seen as worthless. And when that kind of discourse exists in our society, there are consequences to that, and I think we saw that. Again, look at what Jesus did. The political discourse of his time would have been to denigrate the tax collector because he is unworthy because of what he does. He's a sinner. And what does Jesus do? He goes right over that and he recognizes him as a human being. That should be a challenge to us all. My dear friends, the Word of God today is calling us to see all of creation and all of humanity as worthy of our love and respect, just as they are of God's love and respect too. And from time to time, we have second collections to help focus our minds on particular areas in our lives where people are struggling, where people are suffering, and where they need our help to be able to shore up their human dignity. Many of those collections deal with collections for the poor. And here at St. Andrew, we have a long-standing tradition of supporting our sister parish in Uganda. And through our efforts, we've done a lot to help people in that part of the world. We've actually, through our efforts, been able to help build 2 schools already. And this weekend, today, we will be taking up a second collection for our sister parish in Uganda. And Father Matthias, the pastor, has identified to us their most recent need, which is some repairs to their rectory. You can look online to our parish bulletin and you'll see a picture of his rectory that has a huge crack running down the middle of the wall, and also, we won't see it, but also in his foundation. I was able to visit there in 2013, and let me tell you, his rectory looks nothing like ours here. It's very simple, but it's his home and the home of the priests that serve with him. And it's been condemned now. It's not safe. So they need to rebuild. They need our help. Next weekend, we'll have another second collection, and this time it's a special collection that has been called forth by Cardinal Cupich, which is to help aid the many refugees who have arrived of late to Chicago. Refugees that have been bused here from southern states. And thankfully, some parishes have dedicated themselves to help answer the call, the need. And Catholic Charities has been at the heart of many of those efforts. But now they need our help to fund the activities that they're doing, which helps provide for asylum seekers, like finding housing for them and clothing, and because they come with nothing except the clothes on their back. Again, the political discourse would say that those people are not worthy of our help. Many will argue that we as a country have a right to protect our borders and to regulate them. And they're correct. And the U.S. bishops in their pastoral letter have indeed identified that. But it's not an absolute right. Meaning, we can't just close our borders and say no one can come in. Because mercy has to be behind our actions and our decisions. And there are people who are suffering, especially political refugees, and they need our help. They are not less than. They are not inhuman. They are not rapists, thugs, and thieves, as some might describe them. They're people. They're human beings, loved by God and hopefully by you and me, because they are indeed part of God's creation. And as such, there is no garbage, only treasure.